Do we need men?
Fuck no, fuck her.
Do we need men?
No.
Do we need men?
No.
No?
We don't need short men.
Do you need a man?
No.
Do you need a man?
Oh god.
Do you need a man?
No.
Do we need men?
No.
Why?
No.
Do we need men?
No.
No? Do we need men?
We need men to make us stupid.
Do we need men? Do we need men? Do women need men in this world? Do we need men?
No.
Why?
Because we can be strong, independent women.
Do we need men?
Like, not necessarily, but like, if I can look at them, like, we need a man to look at.
Do we need men?
No.
No, why?
Nobody needs men.
Really?
We do not need men.
Why not? Why don't we need men?
Why would I need men?
So what can you get from someone else that you don't get from a man?
The only thing I can get from a man that I can't get anywhere else is dick.
Okay.
And I don't need dick.
Do we need women?
Yes,
We do. Why?
these women are awesome.
Do we need women?
Of course,
Why?
they're beautiful.
Do we need women?
Women make us feel compassionate and affectionate.
Do we need women?
Of course we do.
Do we need women?
Yes.
Why?
Because they're hot.
And what else?
They're hot.
Do we need women?
I mean, shit, unless they're gay.
Do we need women?
Do we need women?
Yeah.
Yes, who's gonna do my dishes?
This is HBR News number 446, Aerosmith, White Rural Rage, Maps, and more, where we discuss the news of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Hello everyone, welcome to Honey Badger Radio, and happy International Women's Month, or Women's History Month? I don't know, whatever it is. It's the month of Whammons. I am your host, Brian Martinez, and I am joined by Hannah Wallen and Dr. Randomcam. We're going to be discussing the news of the week, so please be sure to continue the conversations both in the chat as well as the comment section. On this week's HBR News show, we're going to be talking about, there's this case against Aerosmith frontman Steven Tyler that was recently thrown out, which I think is very interesting because of the timing. There is a certain individual named Nex Benedict, and the story surrounding this person, which I don't want to spoil anything, but I think it's worth looking at. White Rural Rage and more, so stick around, it's going to be a good time. And be sure to join us afterwards for the patron only show. So I want to start this by saying, and I'm not saying I'm the only one that did this, but I have been vindicated. Gamergate is back, or it never left, which is really the argument that I would make. And you probably have seen trending on the Twitters or just on YouTube or whatever. There is this consultation firm called Sweet Baby. And, well, it's a big story. I'm not going to go into the whole thing right now, but there's constantly things that are being sort of unearthed, excavated, as Allison would put it.
It's just in time for the 10th anniversary of Gamergate. It's like
it is.
A coming of age ritual for a 10-year-old boy. It's like when you stick your hands in the barrels full of bullet ants.
Yep.
Yep, we are at current year plus 9. Next year we will have to celebrate the 10th current year.
Yeah, the anniversary of the current year. The 10th anniversary of the current year is next year, so stick around for that. We'll probably still be here. So we have this article. This is what?
I hope so.
Yeah. We have this article. It's from my friend John Delrose, who runs a news, sort of like a pop culture news website called Fandom Pulse. Sweet Baby Inc. CEO Kim Belair. Here's the story about all. I don't remember how it goes, but anyway, Kim Belair, the princess of Bel Air, CEO Kim Belair's speech urged employees to terrify video game companies if they don't give you what they want. We're going to be going through this.
Literally terrorism.
Yes, that is actual terrorism.
Yeah, but it's a mafia shakedown, basically. She's like, it would be a shame if something were to happen to your company if you don't change all these characters to match our standards of narcissism. like make this one a woman of color with hair just like mine and a face just like mine. It's not me, but it's the only way I know for sure that you're playing ball. Otherwise, I'm afraid you have to get me too'd. And that's kind of like how they operate. So we're gonna read through this article and talk a little bit about the Sweet Baby Inc. situation, as well as Sweet Baby Inc. Detected, which is sort of like a group or a curator group on Steam, as well as a Discord server and other things related to that. I'm actually going to be interviewing the guy who started that whole thing next week. His name is Cabrutus on Discord, at least, and I think on Steam as well.
What does everyone else imagine when you hear the phrase "Sweet Baby Inc"? To me, it sounds like what the interdimensional vampires are trying to suck out of the babies.
It's definitely ink made out of baby poop. I'm sure that's what it is. They're writing letters to people in baby poop.
I dread to think. Ink. I dread to think what else this, because like the affiliate. So I did an extended video about it, and the affiliate. There's like several organizations, NGOs, non-profits in quotes, and other sort of studios. They all have like the same people in them, and they all like know each other. And they're all in Canada. It's super weird. So we're going to go into that in the Patreon show. And if you want to join us on the Patreon show, you have to become a badger yourself by going to feedthebadger.com and setting up a monthly subscription. $5 a month will get you into our Discord, where you will be able to consume all of the additional content, like all of our extra shows. But that's not all. We have game nights, movie nights. There's lots of great people in there. And now, I mean, when I'm able to, I will pop on and play some games with people in the game chat. I've been playing a little Helldivers 2, which is amazing because I'm basically made it my life's mission to play every game that triggers people that I don't like. So Helldivers 2 triggers people, I play Helldivers 2. That's how I operate now. And it just so happens that it is a good game. So anyway, yes, I was right. I am vindicated. I said, for people who thought Gamergate was cringe or whatever, welcome to my life. Now you're here too. So we'll talk about that in the Patreon show. And if you don't want to wake up one morning to find that we have been yeeted by the legacy internet media, then you should go to where we sort of like, where we archive everything, which is at badgerfeed.com. That's badgerfeed.com or honeybadgerradio.com, where all of our content lives. So without further ado, let us get into today's stories. So first we have a little story about Steven Tyler. I want to do a little Aerosmith singing, but I don't know if anybody wants
to. Sing that high?
Well, he's all over the place, but I do like the Dream On song a lot. So, but I'll try. I did when I used to do karaoke, I did do Under Pressure, and I did the Freddie Mercury side, and I managed to do.
Oh yeah,
I can sing that high if you pull my fingernails out.
there's singing high and there's singing loud, and there's doing both like Steven Tyler does. That'll destroy your throat.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't actually sing that high, although I can do a Miss Piggy imitation very loudly. But I'm not gonna do that now.
Okay.
I did put that in the song though. It was intentionally bad.
Yeah. Okay, so anyway, Steven Tyler, a federal judge in New York, has dismissed a case against Aerosmith lead singer Steven Tyler. So did you guys know that he was Me Too'd? That he was accused? Did you know about this? In 1975.
Yeah, I had heard about him being Me Too'd a long time before Me Too was Me Too.
Well, the case has just been dismissed, so...
He was Me Too'd kind of quietly, but then he was Me Too'd more loudly. Like, it became, oh, we're going to talk about this again after Me Too. But the thing that people don't understand in terms of these guys' lives, these rock stars that were famous in the 70s, is that we're talking about a whole different era and a whole different set of rules that were being followed by normies, not just famous people. And so, of course, when you apply today's standards, you're going to look back and go, well, you know, this is terrible. This allegation is very serious and blah blah blah. But in the day, and I think in 1975 he was not all that. Like, you look at him now and people see an old man because he's an old man now, but he wasn't an old man in 1975 either. So
no,
it's intended,
he was basically
talking about it.
He never really looked like a man. Dude looks like
and he wasn't an adult at the beginning of his career either. So, I'm sure that there were women out there that were older than he was, that had sex with him when he was young and famous. But I'll bet he won't Me Too any of them. That only happens with allegations, for the most part. It only happens with allegations against men. I think there's been one woman out of all the Me Too allegations. One has been female. And the rest have all been female on male or male on male. And so it's bullshit for this to be even a thing where you go back and say, in 1975, this groupie had sex with this rock star, and by today's standards, it was rape. Like, he probably was stoned out of his mind.
Let me finish the write-up. So, regarding a 1975 incident alleged of sexual assault against a teenage girl, Jeannie Bellino. Jeannie's got a gun.
Yeah.
It's the court system. What did her daddy do? The judge ruled that the case did not qualify under the Victims of Gender Motivated Violence Protection Act, the VGM-VPA, I've never heard of that, and cited two state laws, the Child Victims Act and the Adult Survivors Act, as preempting the filing order VGM-VPA. Tyler's attorneys argued that the plaintiff showed a, quote, lack of diligence, end quote, by not suing under these state laws. Bellino's lawyers plan to ask the court to reinstate the lawsuit, citing a failure to serve the motion for dismissal properly. Tyler has vehemently denied the allegations. Bellino now has until March 13th to amend her complaint. So, I think the main thing behind this is there such a thing as the statute of limitations? Like, does that even exist?
Depends on the state and the case. It's unfortunate, but in some states, no. And then the other thing is, the case, if it's civil instead of criminal, it's a different statute of limitations. And feminists have fought to make lawsuits over rape and other sexual misconduct uniquely exempt from statutes of limitations. But it's interesting because obviously, if she's claiming that something happened and he's claiming that it didn't, then either it didn't happen or there's a case there for it didn't happen while he was competent to be involved in it.
Yeah, so I guess most of you, I'd never heard of this Victims of Gender Motivated Violence Protection. I can hardly even say it. You would think the wordiness of a law would make it more specific in nature, but I think it's just to maximize this smoke and mirrors effect. It turns out, it's a law that's localized to New York. It was passed in the year 2000, and it's there to extend the statute of limitations. And we have to ask, what is the point of the statute of limitations if you're just going to extend it willy-nilly to, let's do the maths, 50 years ago? Yep. Does anyone remember anything from 50 years ago?
Why?
In enough detail to make it admissible in court. Either you're already at the ripe old age at which your memory is a mush of Swiss cheese, or You were a child at the time, and if you remembered it then why didn't you say something? Oh, I don't know, 40 years ago. And if you were so traumatized by the event that you blocked it out of your memory, then how did it suddenly re-emerge so fully formed 50 years later? Did it happen in therapy by any chance? Did your feminist therapist sit you down and miraculously
You know what?
a long forgotten traumatic memory that will compel you to pay for another 50 sessions of therapy? It's awfully convenient how that works, isn't it? Yes, I am neglecting to listen and believe all women. I'm very sorry, but questions like this are among the reasons there is a statute of limitations. Witness testimony is a very rocky form of evidence, even at the best of times. 50 years later is very much the worst of times. Yeah. Well, it's gone way past the cusp of the worst of times. And why would it stop there? When this lawsuit doesn't go as planned, New York will probably push it back to 80 years. And any Alzheimer's-ridden vegetable on their deathbed could sue a man over a dream they think they had. So there's no need to give this law such a garbled word salad of a name like Victims of Gender-Motivated Violence Protection Act. It's the Move the Goalposts Act 2000, soon to be followed by the Move the Goalposts Act of 2024. It might get rather confusing, since most of these laws designed to screw men over can also be described as simply moving the goalposts again. It's all just another shift of the Overton window, helping feminist bigots in the law profession and the therapy profession exploit naive women for the sake of extracting more money and resources from men. Perhaps this is an indication that it's happening too much, and that the solution is to quit moving the goddamn goalposts, at least in that direction, and maybe put them back where they might have belonged. But the system can't do that. The purpose of a system is what it does. And what it does is transfer money and resources from men to women. There is no choice left but to fuck the system. Good and hard. With or without its consent. And don't worry. Don't worry, the system won't remember it until 2074.
The sad thing about this is, like, I've been waiting for there to be a flood of these. Not just Steven Tyler, but the rock culture of, like, the late 60s, early 70s, all through the 80s till into the 90s. You had this sort of culture of the bands would tour. They didn't just, a lot of them weren't even making much money. Like, the record companies were making ass loads of money. The bands were in a lot of debt. And if they didn't have a good agent to get them good contracts, they didn't get rich. They just got famous. And they had a lot of women that would follow them, and a lot of girls, just about basically 15 years old and up. Old enough that their moms and dads, if they had dads at home, let them follow these bands. You know, and the band would go on a summer tour, and they might start on one coast and work their way across the northern part of the country to the other coast, and then drop down to the southern part and go back. You know, so that you have different concerts in different cities in almost every state, or, you know, half the states, and people would go to another state to see the band and everything. And there were girls who would make a summer out of following the band and going to all of their concerts. And groupies would do anything to get things like backstage passes, find out where the band was staying, find out if they could get access to them one way or another, and sleep with them. And there's even reference to that in a lot of these guys' songs. Different bands have, you know...
Motley Crue was infamous, I think. I think a lot of their songs have lyrics like that.
Yep.
Def Leppard,
so
too.
a lot of bands had reference to the behavior of groupies, and there were a lot of drugs in use. It was really dumb behavior, honestly. I mean, like now in hindsight, there were people who were popular, famous musicians that were part of this machine when Gen Xers were in junior high school, and college, that are now having heart attacks and strokes and other very serious health repercussions from the drugs that they used back then, because they weren't just smoking pot. They were using cocaine, they were using heroin, they were using everything they could get their hands on, ecstasy, all of the designer drugs, and fans would give them drugs, right? Fans would share their drugs with them. So there were a lot of people who would, do a show, and they would be completely, like, a lot of people don't have the capacity to get up on stage straight anyway. It's terrifying to be up there, especially if you get stage fright. And so a lot of people are already drinking when they get up there, or they've already smoked some pot to chill their nerves, if that works for them. And they've done other things, to get themselves worked up to do the amount of work that's involved in a show like that, because you're not just going up there and talking to people. You're giving a musical performance and a dance performance, and you are a cheerleader at the same time, because it's your job to get the crowd pumped up and keep them pumped up. And then you also have to be aware of what the crowd that you can see and that can see you up close is doing. It's not just a minor thing. So I've been waiting. I've been expecting, there to be this flood of chicks come forward, that are my age, say I was with this singer or that artist, this drummer, that guitar player, whatever, when I was 15, and they were insert age between 21 and 30 here, and band members going, I wasn't there, I don't remember that never happened, and then come out with evidence that maybe it did, but they were drunk or stoned, and so they don't remember it.
Or they were lying. These girls were lying about their age or something
right,
like that.
Right,
Fake IDs
or they
something.
were lying, fake ID, or the incident never happened, but the girl is 100% sure that it did. There are some chicks that fantasize so hard that they think it's real, and I've actually been present for that kind of behavior. That where she's actually shocked that the thing that she was sure really happened didn't happen, because she fantasized about it so hard that she convinced herself that it had. But it surprises me that we're just seeing a little trickle of these at this point.
Oh no,
and I hope it never comes, to maybe groupies are a better caliber of woman after all. That maybe they look back and are like, well, we followed these guys and caught them when they were exhausted and high and fucked their brains out. That might look bad on us, that kind of thing. Maybe they're smart enough to figure out that that's not the best allegation to make. But aside from that, I am kind of surprised, because I'm sure people are looking back at some of these guys going, yeah, they had a different woman every night, or they had 2 or 3 different women every night, and some of them were very prolific fuckers, and then some of them didn't get involved at all. So
yeah. Well, I mean, so what I was thinking is that if it's been 50 years, I mean, there's no way to really go back and see if any of what was said to have happened has happened. So you could just make something up, and like Steven Tyler would have to prove what, like that he could remember what happened 50 years ago, like that. I think it's and again, if it is just a civil suit, which I'm kind of like curious about, I don't think it's actually a criminal suit. Sure.
No, it's just a civil suit.
So
It's
if it's
not a
just a
criminal
civil suit,
case.
then yeah, then it'll like you. Why would you do it to get a payout, right? I mean, to get
Right,
some
and the
damages
standard will be
and
lower too. The
yeah,
standard in a civil case is
yeah,
going
the
to be the
standard of proof is going to
preponderance.
be lower. Yeah, the preponderance of evidence. I mean, he
Right.
still won, but it's shocking that it took this long. Like
Well,
for
and he only
'cause I
won
mean,
because she filed under the wrong law.
yeah, exactly. So, you know, there's a number of I mean, he may end up having to pay out anyway. And the thing is, like beyond that that this can be exploited in this way. It can also be used to destroy his reputation. Because I mean, like we know for sure, like yes, rock stars and celebrities in general, right? They have more access to, you know, sex than the average guy, like if they're male. And that would mean that they're in more danger in that regard. And I think actually a lot of musicians, you know, we're just talking about the musicians that talk about or boast about their exploits. There are also a lot of musicians that warn, you know, that warn guys about like women that will, you know, exploit them and use the system against them.
And this isn't even the only way they do it. I mean, that's what
Right.
Billie Jean was about.
Yes, that's right. That's what Billie Jean was about. So, well, I guess I'm glad Steven Tyler avoided the conviction right now. I guess he still got to go through the appeal process. I think it's just ridiculous. 50 years. I think that's like the biggest gap of any allegation that we have come across on this show so far. It's the biggest gap. I think the next biggest was like maybe 30 years or something. There were a couple like that. If you guys remember one that's older than this Steven Tyler thing, let us know in the comments. So I always think of Steven Tyler as the American version of Mick Jagger. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, same time frame, right? But
I mean, like just the lips,
more,
you know. But he's American, does like a Southern rock thing as opposed to Mick Jagger, you know.
Yeah.
But I just that's how I see it. I just think like Steven Tyler is American Mick Jagger to me.
I'm just glad he got to get old. He's an interesting looking old man.
Yeah, well,
he's an interesting performer in his.
He's a weird looking dude in general. But go ahead, Mike.
It's odd how many of these rock stars who've spent their whole lives fucking themselves up on drugs are still alive at 80 and in great shape. I'm not saying drugs do that. You know, maybe successful rock musicians become successful because they're so photogenic in the first place, and that's so it's just a correlation. But maybe drugs aren't that bad for you. No, they are.
Maybe they just have the best health care, and when the shit hits the fan, you know, their doctor can do something about it, as opposed to like street addicts who have no health care and, you know, totally different story. Although I wonder if maybe he just was smart and avoided the more dangerous things, or didn't do them as much as everybody else did. Or maybe he's just got good DNA. That's a possibility too.
And with regard to statute of limitations and how far it's going to go back, I have to wonder how many people are going to Me Too Walt Disney, but it doesn't matter because it's in the public domain now.
Yeah, they're gonna Me Too Steamboat Willie. Okay, so let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. I'm gonna move on, but I got a bunch of super chows, so I'm gonna read through them. And thank you guys so much for sending those through. So Richard Bier gives us $5 and says, "There used to be a pro." Oh no, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. He says for $5, "Can all of those strong independent club women change their own flat tires if they get one without calling road service?" He's referring to the intro video of I don't know if you guys saw it, but it was a guy like kind of on the street guy. He's asking all these women like, "Do we need men?" And they're all saying, "No, of course not." And then later he's asking a bunch of men, "Do we need women?" And the men are like, "Of course we do." And that's the whole story.
Never mind the fucking tires. How about the food that arrives magically on your shelf via the grocery stores?
Yeah,
How about all the fucking energy that magically makes its way through your plug sockets and your pipes? How about this? We really need to. It's such a short video, but we could go on for hours about
Yes.
what it tells us about.
I think it's very, it's exactly. It is very poignant. All right, and then we got another one from Richard BR for $5, and he says there used to be a prohibition of ex post facto laws being applied to that which happens before said laws came into force. I think that the feminists want a special hybrid court system where it would be both criminal and civil at the same time. Application of criminal penalties with the proof standard of civil courts. Yes, and also I think that it all ultimately they get to decide, because they can still engage in social and representation destruction or reputation destruction anyway. And I think that's one thing they could do to Steven Tyler, even if he beats everything. They can say, oh yeah, he was accused of this. Because remember, Me Too was kind of like a trial run of that. Like they were doing that to everyone. You know, like the Bill Cosby thing is still not finished, but everyone assumes that he's guilty because there were accusations. They're not, like, it doesn't even matter if he gets off scot-free, completely innocent, whatever. No one's gonna report on it, and people are just gonna, it's gonna be memory hold, and people are just gonna be like, yeah, you mean Bill Cosby, the rapist? And that's gonna be what people think. So it almost doesn't matter if there's a conviction, because they can just destroy your reputation. And then it's the way women operate. It's just the way they operate. But thank you for that. Richard Bier then gives another $5 and says, surely there will be some law firm starting to run ads about the very thing that Hannah is talking about. After all, there are the suits over Roundup and Camp Lejeune.
Lejeune. I don't know Lejeune. It's not Ohio, so.
Yeah.
It's a French word. It's probably pronounced like a French word because it's not in Ohio. No, if it was in Ohio, it'd be Lejeune.
Lejeune.
You know, like our community slightly north of where I live called Versailles. That's spelled Versailles, but it's Versailles.
I really need to say this. We don't need to call them croissants. We don't need to fucking struggle our way through the word croissant. Let's just call them crescents. That's what crescents mean.
Oh yeah, because they're crescent shaped. I was gonna say cross ants.
It's not fun. It's like trying to say filet o fish. Just say filet of fish.
Filet of fish.
We're not French. We don't have to say French words. It's a crescent.
I am a little.
It's a fucking chocolate bread. It's a fucking fillet of fish.
Fillet of fish. Okay. Escargot. Okay.
Snails.
So snails are just snails. Meredith G gives us $5. What's up, Meredith G? And says HBR News 446, Honey for the Badgers. Don't the movies Almost Famous and The Banger Sisters cover the whole groupie thing? Yeah. I've never seen those before. I heard Almost Famous was pretty popular, but I never saw it. I think this issue is that with so many lawyers grifting on legal changes, that Tyler's accuser thought she could make bank. That's what I think too. And look, like, honestly, what's the penalty for her being wrong or not winning the case? I mean, like, I guess she has to pay the lawyer, maybe, but like, what's most likely to happen is that Steven Tyler might just, like, you know, pay her to make her go away. So, like, it's possible, unless he, like, really, like, you know, takes a stand and says, I'm going to fight this on principle. So, which I think he's doing. But yeah, I mean, what's the penalty to women if they make a false allegation? None. There's no penalties. That's why this stuff's going to keep happening. One of the reasons. Anyway, thank you, Meredith. Thanks, guys, for the super challenge. We're going to move on to the next story. Let us know what you guys think about Steven Tyler's situation in the comments. All right. So, Dagny Benedict, Nex Benedict.
I wonder if she's looking down from heaven thinking, please don't call me Nex Benedict.
Dead name. I dead named him. I dead named.
Well, it's obviously a joke to sound like Eggs Benedict.
Yeah.
So people are trying to talk.
Oh, Negs.
By saying
that's pretty good. Yeah. Why wouldn't you do that? Nex Benedict. That's panic gripped the nation.
I can't believe people are still showing this picture of a fucking 10-year-old girl.
It is weird.
We've all seen the footage of what she looks like now, but this is just. I'll get into this once you've
yeah.
the fucking story. The
media
insists on showing a perfectly vulnerable, perfectly innocent child when what we're dealing with is a teenager who started the fight. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. Panic gripped the nation after a supposedly non-binary student was found dead a day after a so-called group of bullies jumped her in a high school bathroom in Owasso, Oklahoma. LGBT activists were quick to claim that this was the incident that they all feared would happen eventually, that a non-gender conforming person would be murdered for using the bathroom of their desired gender identity. If you're not binary, there is no preferred bathroom.
They didn't fear that this would happen. They were salivating over it.
They were, they
begging,
begging
for a
for
news story like this so hard.
Yep. Mainstream media ran wild with speculation, vigils, protests, and school walkouts were held in support of the cause, and calls for various faculty members of the school to resign or be fired were occurring. But school surveillance camera footage, as well as police body camera footage, released nearly 3 weeks after the incident, would shed new light on what really happened. This is what can be pieced together from this. The truth of the matter begins on February 7th with the student in question, Dagny Benedict, who went by the name Nex at school and with friends, and was allegedly non-binary or at the very least non-gender conforming. Benedict and her friend group had an ongoing quarrel with a group of 3 other girls. At the day of the fight, the other group was making fun of Benedict and her friend group, allegedly for how they dressed and how they laughed. As lunch period was ending and the group of girls were stacking chairs, Benedict followed the group of girls and waited for them to enter the bathroom. Benedict armed herself with a water-filled water bottle and, alongside 2 of her friends, entered the bathroom. Benedict would later admit to a police officer that she used the water bottle to douse the other group of girls, and this in turn started a fight. 20 seconds later, or after all 7 students enter the bathroom, a school employee is seen approaching and entering the bathroom. Less than 30 seconds after that, all students exit the bathroom, none of which appear to be injured. The media narrative of this event is that Benedict was severely beaten and had her head smashed against the bathroom floor. Like that cop that was killed by a fire extinguisher on January 6th, the darkest day in American history, darker than 9/11. Where were you? Benedict later described the event as the other group of students beating the shit out of her and that she blacked out. However, later in text messages, would admit that the worst that happened to her were cuts and bruises. Later in the day, Benedict's mother, Sue Benedict, would take her to a local hospital and requested that the school's resource officer speak with them. In the video footage from the officer's badge cam, several interesting things are learned. Both Benedict and her mother are relaxed, though her mother is upset about the school's lack of action on the matter of the fight. Benedict is also not visibly injured or in distress, and she's able to recount the ordeal in detail. Benedict's mother also refers to her daughter as Dagny and not Nex, and she also uses she/her pronouns when referring to her. Benedict admits to starting the fight by dousing the other group of girls with water, to which the officer informs her that while she can accuse the other group of girls of assault and battery, they hold the right to do the same to her, and that the incident will most likely be viewed as a mutual fight. After the police interview, Benedict and her mother return home. The following day, when preparing to leave the house, Benedict collapsed in the living room and began struggling to breathe. Benedict was not breathing by the time EMTs arrived, was later declared dead at the hospital. As of right now, no definitive cause of death has been given. Medical examiner in charge of the case states that a complete autopsy has been done and indicates that Benedict did not die as a result from any trauma or other head injury. Toxicology results and other ancillary testing results are still pending.
But before we dissect these details, let's make this clear. No one's gloating over this. No one's reveling over this. None of us are suffering from any lack of empathy. This is a dead teenager. It was tragic. It was untimely. It was, as far as we know, avoidable. But it's very important that we decouple the truth from the prevailing media narrative. The narrative in question being she was killed for being non-binary. What we can argue about is the idea that she was killed as a direct result of this fight. Apparently she blacked out. We'll for the sake of argument, we'll take that as read. She blacked out at the time and then came to shortly afterwards, and she died a couple of days later. You could call that series of events a coincidence. I guess it would be a proverbial heck of a coincidence. Some of you may have seen the footage of her and her mother in the hospital as they visited it on the evening after the incident. Thank God the police officer was there, by the way, to record that footage, because it did, shed some light on what would otherwise have been the perfect darkness for the media to fill with their lies. You can see in that footage, she seemed perfectly lucid, perfectly responsive, perfectly articulate, and with no visible injuries. This, along with the post-mortem, would seem to rule out concussion as the cause of death. However, some kinds of brain injuries have a nasty habit of lying slowly dormant for a couple of days, evading detection until it's too late. So it's certainly not beyond the realm of possibility that she did indeed die from something that was not a coincidence. Of course, recently loads of people have been dying suddenly from a medical coincidence that we're not allowed to talk about on YouTube, so we'll leave that as a question mark in the footnotes, shall we? More importantly is the second part of the narrative, that she was attacked for being non-binary. This, we can say beyond reasonable doubt, did not happen. By her own admission, the incident began as a small group of girls mocking another small group of girls over the way they were dressed. And you can see how she was dressed in the body cam footage from the hospital. She was wearing plain black trousers and a black t-shirt and sneakers. There's nothing gender bending about that look. It's the most neutral thing you can wear. Teenage boys and teenage girls have been wearing that shit since the 60s or whatever. I can see why teenage girls would mock it. Teenage girls will mock anything anyone's wearing for any reason ever. It's what they do. They are the world's shallowest people. But it was not the girls in question who escalated it from there. It was our protagonist, the erstwhile Ms. Benedict. She, in her own group of friends, followed that other group of girls into the bathroom, and by her own admission, she threw water on them. From there, it continued to escalate. Even if it was indeed the other girls who started throwing the first punches, or the first scratches, or whatever it is girls do in a fight, I don't know. But by Ms. Benedict's own admission, those girls escalated it because she escalated it first. Not because she identified as non-binary. Nowhere in this story is it evident that they even knew she identified as non-binary. By all accounts, and by that I mean by her account, because it's the only account we have, this was an ordinary catfight between ordinary teenage schoolgirls over fashion differences. It's the kind of thing that happens literally every day all over the world, and it's been happening for as long as teenage girls have been thrown together in that open-air prison we call high school. I should think such fights sometimes result in a severe injury, and sometimes that severe injury leads to a death. The fact that it happened to a girl who identifies as non-binary only speaks to how common it is nowadays for teenage girls to identify as non-binary. In other words, it's not just a coincidence, it's an inevitable coincidence. This is what the media does. They prey on inevitable coincidences, and then they act like it can't possibly be a coincidence. It must be because protected group, blah, blah, blah. It's just like the George Floyd situation. With that much fentanyl flying across the border, it was only a matter of time before some criminal of a protected minority was caught on camera dying from a fentanyl overdose under police custody. As a matter of fact, it probably happens all the time. The media just waits until the most opportune, expedient moment to pick up such a story and run with it. By opportune and expedient, I namely mean during an election year. If they can't keep this story fresh until November, they'll just find a different one in the summer. One where they don't have damning body cam footage of the victim testifying to their own involvement in the escalation. It's Operation Drag Floyd. They desperately want it to happen, and they're going to find it at some point in the next 8 months. Don't fall for it, people. Don't give them an inch. Not even on day one of the hysteria, before the facts have even come out. Like you all did with George Floyd. Going, that cop totally shouldn't have nailed his knee on his neck like that. That was out of order. He was definitely in the wrong. No! You were in the wrong. We've had the lessons. Learn from them. If it seems like exactly the kind of thing that the oikophobic scumbags in the media want it to be, it's very probably bollocks. If it seems too good to be true, it's probably false. And if it seems too bad to be false, it's probably also false. Hey, there you go. That was almost profound. Put that on the poster. It's probably true.
Yeah, I was skeptical of that from the word go, honestly. Because I mean, like, we've been lied to by the media for at least 10 years, doing this, you know. So, but yeah, I agree. I mean, I predicted like earlier this year. I said this year, because it is election year, the media is waiting for something to happen. And when you have a country of nearly 500 million people, and there's drugs everywhere, and crime is run rampant because, you know, like, they're lax on crime and all this, all you gotta do is wait. Everybody's got phones. Everyone's looking to find something so they can go viral. It's an inevitability. So this was an opportunity that, fortunately, people were doing their due diligence. It didn't shake out that way, but it's only March. So we got a ways to go yet. Happy Women's History Month, by the way.
And I want you to remember, they don't have to find an incident to have an incident. All they have to do is control how you talk about the incident. For instance, if I remember right, during the whole investigation and hearing following the George Floyd incident, just mentioning George Floyd could get your video demonetized, de-emphasized. Like, it wouldn't. People stopped getting notifications for our live streams because we mentioned Floyd. Right? It doesn't even matter how we talked about it. So if you suppress public discussion, then what the public hears is whatever the narrative given by the establishment over the mainstream media outlets is going to be. That's the information that they get. And it's how they were able to control the narrative on Cosby. It's how they were able to control the narrative on Floyd. And they weren't able to control the narrative on this for a very specific reason. The one thing that changed in between incidents like that and today is they don't have the cooperation of Twitter in suppressing discussion of those incidents. They don't have the cooperation of Rumble in suppressing discussion of those incidents. And Rumble is now big enough that there is enough widespread discussion taking place there, and Twitter was already big enough that there was enough widespread discussion taking place there that they cannot control that narrative. So I think that at some point, you know, they're going to keep trying this stuff, but at some point, don't be surprised if they go after Musk legally to take away his control of Twitter in order to get back that control over the narrative. But in the meantime, when you see stuff like this, And the narrative is this one incident took place based with this particular description that makes this one group of people, like, you know, handful of people, look really, really bad and fit a narrative about, you know, this victim group, this demographic being oppressed by all of society.
Yeah.
Like, when you see that, remember a logic fallacy called hasty generalization. Right? A hasty generalization is when you make a definitive claim, this is absolutely true, on the basis of insufficient evidence, or when you take an anecdote and try to treat it the same as solid evidence of a pattern of behavior in society. Like, both of those are, like, that's insufficient evidence anyway. And so it's not, it might be provable that violence happened in that bathroom, for instance. It's not provable that she was attacked. In fact, it's provable that she was not attacked. So as soon as it's provable that she was not attacked, the question of why she was attacked ceases to matter, because you can respond, no, she wasn't attacked. She was the attacker.
Yeah.
Right? That's when they come back with, well, they hit her, she only put water on them. You know, she was the attacker. Escalation doesn't make you the bad guy in a fight. It makes you a participant. That's how fights happen. That's the progression of having a fight, is each side, after they've had their they've been hit or whatever by whatever kind of an attack they've faced, after they've faced their attack, they try to escalate in order to stop the other side of the fight from hitting them harder. That's like, I don't know who doesn't understand that. I suppose maybe half the country grew up on the side of town where you stand in your backyard and yell at each other, you can't come in my yard, and you never throw fists when you're kids, and you never learn that. But she was the aggressor. She was the attacker. She did not get attacked. So there is no question of why she was attacked, because you can't question why something occurred if it didn't occur.
It didn't occur, right.
Everything else about this narrative doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if she was non-binary. It doesn't matter whether there was evidence of it or not. It doesn't matter what her mom called her. It doesn't matter any of that other stuff, because she was the attacker. But let's say all of this, like, they prove that these girls grabbed her in the bathroom and beat the hell out of her because she was non-binary, right? Let's say there is an incident where that narrative is stated and evidence comes out, video of the whole incident happens, whatever. That's an incident. It's not a national pattern of behavior.
Yeah.
Right? So you cannot translate that into this large group of people is oppressed by people who are not part of this large group, and therefore you have to give up some of your rights. That's where hasty generalization comes in. So those are your two responses to this. Either you find the flaw in their story, and once you have something like, no, she was the aggressor, then you don't have a story there. The rest of it is meaningless. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if her whole family was non-binary. She was the aggressor. Right? That's it. But the other end of it is, if it also doesn't matter if the story was exactly the way they said it had been. If the story had been to the letter, exactly the way they said it had been, it's still not proof that there's a pattern of behavior in the United States like this, or that anybody's rights need to be given up, or that any person in particular should be elected, or any of that.
Yep. All right, well, let us know what you guys think about this in the comments. We're going to move on to the next story, but first, I have a super chow from Richard Bier. He gives us $5 and says, fentanyl is so prevalent that the drug Narcan, used to reverse the effects of an overdose, is now available at Target, Walmart, and Walgreens, CVS Pharmacy.
I have friends that worked in food service when the city of Dayton was proclaimed the opiate addiction capital of the country for a year, and they had to train. They had Narcan on site, and they had to train on how to use it, because at any time somebody might OD in their parking lot, and if they go out and they check on that person and they touch them, all they have to do is get just a tiny little bit of it on their skin, and it can cause a reaction. So they had to learn how to save themselves if they got accidentally dosed with it. There was a cop here that just from trying to check on and rescue somebody who had OD'd ended up getting overdosed from touching them, because they had it all over them, and had to use it as well. So police had to carry it. Like, places that you would just your normal expectation would be go to work, do your job, go home, never encounter a health emergency the whole time you're employed at that location, unless something really bizarre happens, like you get hit by a tornado, right? Had to train in how to use this life-saving method to deal with somebody else's overdose, because of the risk of getting it on them. And then there's some people like me who have the additional fun of an allergic reaction to it because it's an opiate. I'd be in extra danger. So you wouldn't be able to assassinate me with it any easier than any other person, but you could make me really miserable for several days.
All right, thank you for the super child, Richard. Let us move on to next story. All right. Earlier this week, University of Maryland professor Thomas Schaller and journalist Paul Waldman were recently on MSNBC's Morning Show with Mika Brzezinski. In the segment, Schaller and Waldman promoted their new book, White Rural Rage: The Threat to American Democracy. Schaller described the book in detail, stating, quote, "We lay out the fourfold interconnected threat that white rural voters pose to the country. They're the most racist, xenophobic, anti-immigrant, anti-gay, what's the rest of this? Geodemographic group in the country. Second, they're the most conspiracist group.
Well, she just proved that part wrong.
Yeah, QAnon support and subscribers, election denialism, COVID denialism, and scientific skepticism, Obama birtherism. Third, anti-democratic sentiments. They don't believe in an independent press, free speech. They're most likely to say the president should be able to act unilaterally without any checks from Congress or the courts or the bureaucracy." Wow, I can't hold this projection. They're also the most strongly white nationalist and white Christian nationalist. Fourth, they are most likely to excuse or justify violence as an acceptable alternative to peaceful public discourse.
Okay, it was deceptive. But this is going to be a very long and epic rant, by the way. It was deceptive of him to act like all he had was 4 bullet points, because I counted 16 of them. Gish galloped out at a rate of about 1 per second for anyone who saw the original footage. Hell of a bump-stocked high-capacity magazine you have there, friend. Shall we go over them one by one, folks? 1, racist. I have never heard a white rural person say anything as racist as what this motherfucker just said. No one in history has been as racist as blue state city slicker twat bags like him. Not even the Nazis. He just crammed every chapter of Mein Kampf into one breathless bite-sized statement. And he thinks it's fine because he's found the real brood of vipers. GG, my dude. 2, xenophobic. I refuse to take any shit about xenophobia from someone who has never even heard of the concept of oikophobia. I will not take navigational directions from a stroke victim who only has access to one side of their brain. Obviously, you're only going to point us to the left You don't even know what right is. 3, anti-immigrant. I will remember this next time I try to pass through JFK without getting pulled aside into the customs office to receive another random bollocking for no reason. I get more shit for visiting the US than Ahmed gets for waltzing across the southern border with 5 child sex slaves in tow. Fuck yourself. 4, anti-gay. Again, you might want to ask Ahmed how he feels about the gays. Orlando, Pulse nightclub, 49 people killed. Fuck yourself. 5, conspiracist. You people think QAnon even exists, let alone poses an existential threat to your democracy. Fuck yourself. 6, QAnon. C5. 7, election denialism. You people still think the result of the 2016 election happened because of Russian interference, even though all the official inquiries you could muster revealed no evidence whatsoever. You still think the 2000 election was stolen because something sus happened in Florida. But when something sus happened in 2020 in multiple swing states across the country, you ban everyone from even saying, hey, something looks sus. Fuck yourself. 8, COVID denialism. I'm not allowed to discuss this on YouTube. My right to do so has been denied by you bastards. Fuck yourself. 9, scientific skepticism. That is a tautology. Science, by its very nature, is supposed to be skeptical, you absolute fucking melt. 10, Obama birtherism. 2008 called it wants its meme back. No one even gives a shit where
Ask
Obama
Malik.
was born. Yeah, no one even gives a shit where Obama was born or where he's from or where his birth certificate's from. We're much more concerned with that corpse he's currently puppeteering. 11, anti-democrat sentiments. Yes, rural white people are less likely to vote Democrat. As much as it pisses you off, people are still allowed to vote Republican. I know you're working on scratching that little itch as much as possible, but it's not going well, is it? 9-0, bitch! Get wrecked! 12, they don't believe in an independent press. Bitch, they are the independent press. They just don't believe you because you are not independent. You're a sick pig suckling on the teat of a cash cow and pissing on a bunch of sheep with a bug up your ass. Fuck yourself. 13, free speech. I think I've made my point. 14, they're most likely to say the president should be able to act unilaterally without any checks from Congress or the courts or the bureaucracy. Tell me again how Joe Biden is sharp and focused and vibrantly fit for the job, yet he is simultaneously too senile to have committed those crimes he committed, the ones for which you are falsely charging Trump. Fuck yourself. 15. They're also the most strongly white nationalist and white Christian nationalist. What, white people? Genius, dude! Groundbreaking research you're doing there. I thought Hispanics were the people most likely to be leading the Proud Boys. Oh, wait. 16. They are most likely to excuse or justify violence as an acceptable alternative to peaceful public discourse. Say her name. Laken Riley. You fuckers have a hell of a nerve to be saying this shit while white Americans are getting their skulls caved in by people who you've trained to hate them and paid to flood into the country to do as they please. You're doing this because you've long since given up trying to win elections through peaceful public discourse. You can't even do it through your usual divisive, hateful public discourse. Even that shit's not working anymore. So you've resorted to flooding the country with violent criminals who will brutally murder all the white rural people. The ones you haven't already murdered by forced lethal injection. I'm not sure if I've pointed this out yet. I'm not sure if I've made this clear or not, but fuck yourself. Fuck yourself in the head and keep fucking yourself in your own head until you emerge from your own ass. And then fuck yourself in the ass. Oh, wait, you already did that. Hence, the nightmarish Lovecraft-shaped pretzel in which you already find yourself auto-fucked. Well, the white rural people aren't going to do that like you so desperately want them to. They are armed, and they will defend themselves to the bitter end. And you're not going to like it, because they're not going to forget, and they're not going to forgive you. Why the fuck would they? They ain't true with you by damn sight. They're gonna get medieval on your ass. And I'm here for it. Afuera.
Anna?
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
That's all I have to say about this. There is nothing left that needs to be said here.
Yeah, this is, it sounds like it's essentially, you know, white rural voters are not your audience. White rural voters are over. You know, like these are the Gamers Are Dead articles, but for the world, for the whole country. Almost like there's a connection, like some kind of thread that runs through all of these people. Some belief system.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, anyway. Yeah, I got nothing to add. I think Mike's basically said everything that needs to be said for that. So let us know what you guys think about that in the comments. I do have a thing here from Richard Bier. Thank you, Richard. And he gives us $5 and says, so when and who will be clamoring for trains to relocate white people to an undisclosed location where the re-education facility is that nobody will return from, and then they won't be heard from or spoken from of ever again? Any guess on the timeline of this happening? Well,
that'll all be organized by Antifa.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people involved in Antifa that are going to be surprised that they will be included on the trains.
Yes, they're going to be among the first. So,
yep.
So there's also that. Anyway, let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. I am here for this white male rage. And yeah, we're going to move on to the next story. So, well, the last story, actually. A short one, but really strange. And I have another one that's kind of maybe connected to it, I think. So, Kentucky State Senator Karen Berg has attracted attention for her bizarre argument in favor of providing child sex dolls to nonces. I don't know if I can say this one on YouTube, so I'm just going to say nonces. To discourage them from acting on their impulses. In a video, Berg, using the term minor attracted persons instead of nonces, or MAPS, which is something we brought up on the show before, claimed that limited research suggested that these dolls could decrease the likelihood of attacks on children. He admitted the research was not comprehensive, but asserted its conclusiveness. Berg has previously gained notoriety for impassioned speeches, including accusing pro-lifers of, quote, killing women, end quote, and opposing legislation she deemed, quote, anti-trans, end quote. The GOP holds an 82% majority in the Kentucky Senate. So that's a fortunate, I guess, thing, despite all that. So, yeah. And also, I thought maybe related, I don't know. I thought it was a really strange story I saw on WFSA.com, which is, and I'll share this one too. This was in a school. I don't know if I think it might be related, not like one-to-one, but there was a school and there were kids licking the toes or sucking on the toes of staff and teachers. So they're blurred out because they're underage.
That is Geopete.
So anyway, I just want to throw that in there, because I almost picked that one as a story. I was a little undecided on it, but this is what's going on in schools right now. That's all I will say. So
I put the Kentucky maps story in for a particular reason, and this is something that. So 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when the myth that child molestation was just something men do and not women, that there are, nonces were all these creepy looking corner hiding, or, around a dark alley hiding, nobody would expect them to be around kids anyway, kind of old men that you could protect your kids from by telling them about stranger danger and all that. There was a pretty clear line where we understood that the behavior was monstrous, and there was a perception of the people as willful monsters, and of course, there was a clear, you do anything that remotely smacks of this, the community will come down on you like hellfire, and at best, if you're very lucky, you'll get put into a mental health institution where they might be able to help you not do that kind of shit anymore. And that was it. That was the way that it was treated, and that was pretty effective in dealing with an individual with dangerous proclivities toward children. Right? You stop them. You put them in an institution. You put them either in incarceration if they're willful, and you put them in mental health containment if they don't think they can help themselves. Right? That was it. And when it became more and more known that sometimes women and girls do this, well, actually, women and girls do this as much as men and boys do. Which is to say, not very much, but enough that it scares the shit out of everybody, and in places where you wouldn't expect. Like at school, or in church, or as leaders of clubs like the Scouts, or as leaders of clubs like 4-H, where you send your kids to be taught life skills and learn good things, right? Where you expect them to be safe, out of your care. Places like daycare centers, where it happens. All of a sudden, it's humanized. The behavior's humanized. And people are interested in trying to find ways to help these people satisfy their proclivities innocently. Like, I'm going to explain something about these folks, because I've argued with them a lot on Twitter, and I've argued with them a lot on other social media prior to Twitter's existence. I have heard from minor attracted people acceptance advocates for a long time. As soon as they find out you're a recovered victim, they want to try to convince you that what happened to you was not that bad, right? That what happened to you was not a big deal. You didn't suffer, and you're fine, and they should be allowed to do that kind of thing. And you probably consented to it. Right? That's basically the discussion. As soon as they know they're talking to somebody who can see through their shit, and they get aggressive, they try going back to grooming, and when grooming doesn't work, they get threatening and shaming and accuse you of hurting them, even though you're just talking, right? But the most interesting thing that they do is they tell this lie that it's just an attraction to a body type. And if they could have a substitute for that body type, they'd be fine. That's not true. And the reason I know that's not true is I've asked, if you had the ability to have a relationship with an adult who merely looked like a child, but was in fact an adult who could consent, somebody with the type of disorder that, say, oh shit, I can't think of his name, Gary Coleman had, where it took him years and years before he really looked like an adult because his body didn't age like that. Would that be sufficient? You could be in a relationship, in a consensual relationship with an adult, but you could have that body type. Oh no, it wouldn't be the same. Oh really? So what would be different about it? Every time I ask that question, what would be different about it? Well, the person wouldn't have the innocence of a child. But that's not what they mean when they say innocence. It's not innocence they're looking for. It's incompetence. They cannot have a relationship with somebody who is competent to appraise their actions and choices in a relationship. So they prey on children because children are incompetent to consent. And if you give them sex dolls made out of children's image, like made to look like little boys and little girls that talk and say things little boys and little girls will say, they'll use them to act out fantasies and get themselves worked up and continue to perpetrate. It will have zero effect toward preventing perpetration. I don't know if it'd increase it, but because they target children in order to take something from someone who is incompetent to consent, nothing will act as a proper substitute. You could give them virtual reality. You could give them any substitution. If you could pipe experiences into their head that never happened, it still wouldn't work. Because they would know they hadn't victimized somebody who is incompetent to consent. So it's bullshit. And I would be, if that was a senator in my state, I would be asking the Attorney General to look into her and what she does when she's not in the in the Senate.
I learned, if Telemnar is correct, I learned that this woman's daughter had a daughter, and her daughter came out as trans in 2015, then committed suicide.
Yeah, I will bet you there's more to that story.
I would bet that I would bet something too. Yes,
more, because that would be too much. But I will bet you there is more to that story.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the other thing, and this pisses me off too. About this kind of thing. It is an unfortunately frequent occurrence that when somebody does this kind of harm to a child, other members of their family look for ways for them to be innocent. Desperately look for ways for them to not have the brokenness inside that causes people to behave that way. And they get so caught up in that's more important to them than protecting their own children and, preventing the individual from harming again. And, that's it could be, people will do that for themselves. They will make those excuses for themselves. But they'll also make those excuses for their family members when they know damned well that person is harming children in ways that will take them decades to recover from, if at all. And they'll just let it keep happening. And that may be, that may be all I can say about her in this case. The thing that we saw with the kids licking feet, the only thing that needs to be said about that is, once again, children, kids, even teenagers really, are incompetent to consent. They do not have the capacity to say okay to something like that. So if the school had them do that, like it even doesn't even matter if it was perverse. The fact that it was germy as hell, none of that touches the fact that the school administrators and the teachers participated openly in something. They fucking filmed it with students who were incompetent to consent, and it was the type of thing that you should have to ask consent for. And I bet they didn't talk to their parents about it before they did it.
Yeah.
I doubt they actually filmed it themselves. I'm almost certain somebody filmed that without, somebody snuck in and filmed it without
the knowledge
of any of the faculty.
Yeah.
Of course, they wouldn't allow it to be filmed. They don't allow parents to know what's going on. Why on earth would they allow anyone to film it?
Claiming it was for a fundraiser, but I couldn't imagine what that could be. So I'm not excusing any of it.
It blows
that
my
is
mind.
really inappropriate. And but this is the thing. Like, I mean, if I had to guess, female teachers.
Yeah.
And yet we're just gonna be like, well, they're harmless.
Almost all teachers are female at this point, just like almost all nurses are female at this point. They've been working away at me tooing all men out of these industries, and now they've reached the point where you can't say shit about teachers or nurses because they're mostly female, and anything you say about them must therefore be misogynistic. And I guess it's just a massive coincidence that the events of the last 4 years have been held up by, well, you have to let nurses and teachers do whatever they want, even if it involves torturing children. Why? Because I guess it's just a coincidence that they're mostly women.
Yeah, I know.
We've gone backwards in terms of what we've allowed our schools to do. I remember in the 6th grade, we had a outing that we went on, and we did a bunch of team building and trust exercises, and my parents had to sign consent, but they had to not just sign consent, they had to sign consent for the fact that we were going, the fact that we were doing team building and trust exercises, and that they would include hands-on activities like trust falls and other things similar to contact sports before. So like they had to read and sign a whole big paragraph description of what we were going to be doing. And my dad already knew that stuff because he was teaching in the same building as the teacher that took us on this trip. And when I say hands-on, I mean there was one instance where we were acting out the story of the escape from Cyclops through the hole in the cave. And so a couple of the guys picked each person up and put them through a hanging tire on a rope and we raced to see who could do it the fastest, like hands-on. And we had to sign consent for that because there were possibilities of people getting injured, possibilities of people getting, being uncomfortable with it and stuff. They disclosed that, and it shouldn't even be a big deal. I mean, I understand why they wanted consent for that, but I'll bet they didn't talk to a single parent about, we're going to have your kids lick people's feet.
That's nasty. All right, well,
case of crush, anyone?
It's super gross. And something should be done. We'll see if we can learn some information about the toe sucking thing. Like if somebody went to the cops, I don't know. But
dude, if that was my kids, somebody would be in jail already.
I know that would be that,
and it would be you because of
probably
right to jail right away.
Yeah, right to jail. Pa fuera. So anyway, we're gonna look at your super chats and then we're gonna wrap up and head to the patron show. So Richard Bier gives us $5. Thank you, Richard, and says, just who was recording that? Interesting that there aren't on the recording anymore objecting to the activity. Well, maybe it could have been a student that was like didn't want to get caught, so they did so on the down low and then submitted it to the authorities because someone blurred out the faces too. So, you know, it must have gone to somebody important. And then to post it on social media tells that nobody involved thought that there was anything wrong with this activity as a fundraiser. Anyone remember when there would be outrage over a teenage performer being sexualized in their manner of attire for their music videos? Are you talking about like Desmond is Amazing and Lactatia and stuff? I remember. Whatever happened to those kids, I wonder.
You remember when we used to do, you know, bake sales and stuff for fundraisers?
No.
And,
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Gosh, like,
no, you know what I remember? Book, where you had to sell books, and if you sold enough books, you get like
or
prizes.
candy bars. You sell candy bars that had McDonald's coupons on the back.
Yep, I remember that. Yep. Richard
Bier.
Bier.
Not to go door to door because it's dangerous, but you can lick your teacher's feet.
Oh, apparently I didn't mention this, but the teachers had peanut butter on their feet. That was what they were using.
Oh, that couldn't be true. That's nasty.
No, that was I forgot to add that detail, but pretty sure. Kind of like, well, if your dog, you know about the dog pill. So, but anyway,
no,
you don't want to know. You don't want to know.
No.
Richard Bier gives us $5 and says, "You don't know how many parents were in the audience, Hannah. We don't know much else about it, and I don't really want to go down that rabbit hole too deep, but."
I bet there were no parents in the audience because those teachers are all still alive, and this is not a story about a murder.
Well, certainly no fathers in the audience. That much I can guarantee. Anyway, so that's it for the stories. We're gonna head now into the patron show so that I can gloat about how right I am, and we're gonna look at this article from Fandom Pulse, and we're gonna talk about Gamergate 2. Because it is real. I've been looking at Twitter a little bit while you guys were ranting, and Grums. You guys remember Grums, who was like he used to work for Blizzard. He worked on World of Warcraft and I think it was like one of the some other Blizzard games. And yeah, he's been like posting constantly. So like people are getting activated. We're gonna talk about this in the patron show. So please consider joining us by going to feedthebadger.com. And starting a monthly subscription, $5 a month will get you into the Discord where you'll be able to watch this extra content, as well as like all of the other extra content and stuff that's always going on in there. There's lots of events and so on. And I try to play Helldivers with people because Helldivers is an absolute blast. But I don't get a chance to because our schedules are all different. But we'll try to get that going. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you guys in the patron show. So with that said, if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today, and please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on this episode of HBR News, and we will talk to you all in the next video.
Are machines, dude. Okay, they are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.